to you. How do you do what you do to me? I'm feeling blue. Wish I knew how you do it to me, but I haven't a clue.
Let me tell you, I've got a VIP guest. I got Jose McLAUGHLin, who used to be in GERRY and the Pacemakers. How are you today, Jose?
I'm really good, Plastic. How are you?
I'm great. Now, let me tell you, nobody knows that you're in Brisbane. You're in Australia, and I welcome you so much, right? You're like my neighbour now. How many years have you been in Australia?
Oh, gosh, since 1974.
That's great. Can I ask, have you become a citizen of Australia? Have you got any intention of doing that?
I became an Australian citizen in 1984. I was watching the LA Olympic Games, and Australia were doing really well. And all of a sudden I said to myself, geez, I really feel like an Australian. I'm going to take out citizenship. So I did.
Well, you know what? I salute you. And if I come to Brisbane, I'll come up and say hello. And let me tell you also, I've got a very good friend there. He used to be in the Wrecking Crew, right? Louis Sheldon, who played on Last Train to Clarksville and the Monkeys hits, and Michael Jackson. He's up there in Brisbane too.
Louis is a friend of mine. Yeah, we've done a fair few sessions together. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I have to say anything. I'm waiting for my interview. He said we're going to do one, so fingers crossed. I'm a gigantic Monkeys fan, right? Unfortunately, right, what I'm saying is 1964, the Beatles came here to Melbourne. That was when they had Jimmy Nicol, and Ringo came from his, he had a throat operation. He got his tonsils out, and he met the Beatles in Melbourne. It was the only place he came and played at Festival Hall here in West Melbourne. And let me tell you, West Melbourne is like, it was like an industrial area in 1964. I was only 6 years old. So you have to forgive me for not understanding what all the craziness on the TV. So then comes 1967 here in Melbourne, and the Monkeys TV show's playing on the 20th of July on black and white TV, because we didn't get colour till 1974. So don't blame me.
Well, I brought it with me, yeah.
I'm a first-generation Monkeys fan. I can't help it, but you know yourself, right? Whether you're a Beatles fan, GERRY and the Pacemakers fan, Monkeys fan, you all end up at the Beatles, no matter where you're coming. Michael Jackson or ABBA, you still end up at the Beatles. Is that true or what?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much spot on. Yeah, everything traces back. Everything in modern pop and rock music traces back to the Beatles because they were such an influence, yeah.
Where did you get the name Jose? I don't get it. Like, McLaughlin's really English, but Jose, where does that come from?
Well, from Northern Ireland, but the Jose, I was actually Chris and Joseph.
Okay.
But I was really, had dark looks when I was a kid. And one of my uncles used to nickname me Jose because of I look Spanish.
No, but I reckon that's great, because why have a regular name?
So I was Joe for a long time. And then when I came to Australia, I was in a Melbourne band called Panther, and they were kind of like Australia's version of Santana. Some people had been calling me Jose as a nickname, and they thought it would be really cool if I just went under the name Jose. So I did, and it's stuck ever since. So everybody just knows me as Jose now. Even back in Liverpool, they call me Jose.
You know what's really great? You've come into the Australian scene at the right time. I just want to say, Plastic EP released his first vinyl single, Plastic EP, in the records, right? And the song was called At Home in 3 Special Words in 1981. So the thing that you're established already here in Australia, I reckon that's great. I reckon you just came in at the right time in the music scene here.
Well, the last time I toured here with GERRY was 1972. And I was really impressed with the music scene in Australia at the time. And when I decided to come and live here, I knew I was coming to a pretty healthy music scene, especially in Melbourne in the 70s. And I was only here 5 minutes and I was part of it, you know? Yeah.
That's really great. And what bands did you play with or record with here in Melbourne or over Australia? What bands?
Oh, the first band was a band called The New Dream.
Hey, can I say something? Is that The New Dream that had the song Groupie?
Yeah.
They're my favourite band. That's blown my mind away. Were you part of the band or did you help them record?
Not on Groupie, no. I played on their later singles, yeah.
Oh, that's great, because I really rate them. They were from New Zealand, yeah?
Yeah. And then the other bands, during the 70s, I played with Panther.
Yeah.
We had an album and a couple of singles out, and we just got a new album out actually. It was a live recording of Panther supporting the Doobie Brothers in 1976, and it's just been released on an album. The next band was a band called Daniel. They were a Newcastle band, but we recorded for Image, and we had quite a successful album. And then I was with Project Smith's Hired Hands, and lots of other Melbourne bands in between, and lots of session work, lots of records that I played on. Yeah.
I want to talk about Gerry and the Pacemakers. What year did you join the band?
Well, I joined Gerry as his piano player in the late 60s.
That's great.
And we were basically touring around, the two of us, and we'd pick up bass players and drummers as we went along. And as far as people was concerned, that was Gerry and the Pacemakers. But sometimes the people we used to get to play with us weren't that reliable or that good. And so I said to Gerry one day, how about we just bite the bullet and just kind of reform the band, period, so to stable bands. So that's what we did. And we did that in 1972.
What hits were you able to play? Did you catch on in the late 60s to play on some of his hit songs?
A lot of the big hits were in the early days, 1963, 64. I played on his later singles, like I've Got My Ukulele, Remember the Days of Rock and Roll. And we also went in the studio and redid You'll Never Walk Alone. So I am actually on a recording with Gerry and the Pacemakers playing You'll Never Walk Alone. And a couple of years ago, when they had the COVID lockdown in England, the official UK charts did a survey of the top 100 songs that people were listening to. And that version of You'll Never Walk Alone came in at #1.
Oh, that's unbelievable, isn't it?
So you can say I've had a #1 with Gerry and the Pacemakers too. Yeah.
Of course, I can appreciate all that. Now, I want to get into stuff that people don't know. Okay, now being with Gerry, he's obviously, you know what I mean? He's done the 60s. He's with you in the 70s. He's probably talking about the Beatles and telling you things that people don't know. For example, I saw one of your posts and it said, do you know that Gerry and the Pacemakers wanted Ringo Starr as their bass player? Is that true?
Yes, that's true, yeah.
Can you tell me that story, please?
Ringo was with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes at the time. They were friends. They were both from the Dingle. They were both from streets away from each other when they were growing up as kids. And Ringo liked to muck around on the bass. So one day out the blue, I think they were at a party and Gerry said, why don't you come and play bass with us? Ringo thought about it and I think he was going to do it. And a week later, he got the offer from the Beatles. So he took that one instead.
But did you also know, I'm just saying, what was Gerry's brother's name? The one that was on drums?
Freddie.
Did you know that Freddie, apparently the Beatles wanted Freddie to be the drummer? Did Gerry ever tell you that? And Gerry said, no, he's staying with us. Have you heard that story?
No, I haven't heard that story, no.
I believe that to be fact, that the Beatles were so desperate for a drummer at some point, they wanted to get Freddie, but Gerry wouldn't let him go because he's his brother and he's got his band mate. Yeah. So see how one thing fits into another.
Was that before Pete Best or after?
I'm not sure. I think it must have been after. Like, it could have been between. I don't know, but I've heard that story where Gerry has said that the Beatles wanted Freddie, but I wouldn't let him go.
I mean, there are probably 1,000 stories.
Yeah, that's right.
Connected with the early Beatles and actually verifying them or find out which ones are true or which ones are just, you know.
Yeah, make believe. But I mean, did he tell me some of the stories all the time with Gerry that he used to refer to the Beatles and tell you things that you didn't know or we may not know, but he's told you. And I believe if he's told you anything, it's fact.
We didn't really get to talk an awful lot about the Beatles in the early days, apart from the fact that the Pacemakers used to tour with them, and every now and again, like, he was really good mates with Paul McCartney, so Paul would be having a party and invite Gerry, and Gerry would say, come on, Joe, let's go, come with me, you know. So we go along to the parties. But to be quite honest with you, he didn't really get into a lot of nitty gritty about things that would have gone on.
Did you actually go to some of Paul's parties with him?
Yeah.
How great was that, though? I'm just saying, to be invited to that.
Oh, no, it was good fun. Yeah.
I'm just going to say a few facts that you may know, which I'm sure you know, right? But you know, they recorded the song How Do You Do It because the Beatles didn't want to do it. It was too weak for them, and they didn't want to go back to Liverpool singing How Do You Do It. So they already recorded the demo. Gerry got the demo, it was already made, and all he did is re-record it, and it went to #1 before
That's
Please
right, yeah.
Please Me. How massive is that? And then he had 3 #1 songs, right? But what people don't know is that when Frankie Goes to Hollywood had 3 #1 songs as well. He put one of Gerry's songs on the flip side, and apparently Gerry went to the bank, and there's all this money there because he paid tribute and put the song on the other side. Did you know that
That's
story?
right, yeah. I've actually heard the Beatles version of How Do You Do It?
Yeah, I have too.
I think it was on the Anthology album, actually. When you compare it with Gerry and the Pacemakers version, I wasn't that impressed, actually. I thought Gerry and the Pacemakers version was much better. Probably because the instrumentation was different and it had the piano in it, you know, which made a huge difference to the Pacemakers sound. And I can see why that would have gone to. I think if the Beatles had released that as a single, I don't think it would have gone to #1.
Yeah, I agree. But what happens is Gerry wanted to do it his way, and Gerry put his stamp on the songs where the Beatles did like a weaker version because they didn't want to do it. They weren't into the song. That's the reason.
No, they weren't. No, they didn't. They didn't want to do it. It was all down to George Martin, you know. And basically, the Beatles stood up and said, "No, our first record, we want to be one of our own compositions," which was "Love Me Do." But even that only went to #17.
Exactly. And then there was the rumor that Brian bought up all the singles and had it stored away, and it made it go to #1.
That's an old story, yeah. That's an old story.
I know, but if it's true, those records now would be worth a fortune for collectors.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, people pay unbelievable amounts of money for anything connected to back then, especially the Beatles.
Imagine if you actually did buy them and you kept them and you didn't get rid of them or sell them, and now you're sitting on money. It just blows my head.
I wish I had.
It's amazing.
The benefits of hindsight, eh?
You're more a piano player and guitarist, or you're like 50-50? You do both instruments the same. You're multi-talented. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I do both instruments the same. But these days,
great.
It tends to divide into two genres. Mostly on guitar, I do most of my rock work on guitar.
Yep.
And with the piano these days, it seems to be mostly jazz playing that I do.
Yeah, but that's amazing that you can do both because, you know, being a multi-instrumentalist is the best. Like, for example, Peter Tork from the Monkees, that's what he was. He could play oboe, he could play harp, he could play anything when needed.
I do sing too, and of course I write songs.
And I'm just saying, now being an Australian, you must sit back and think, you know, I'm here where I am and I'm just loving it. I mean, you must love the lifestyle. I mean, the water, the bush, how we live, the way we are. We're very laid back, you know. Basically, I'm just saying, we like being lazy. You know what I mean?
I do like. That's probably the reason I came to live in Australia, because the pace of life was different, and you could see blue skies forever and ever, and sunshine, and fresh fruit and veg, and of course the bonus was that at the time I came to live here, the music scene was fantastic. But I do enjoy living in Australia. But I've got to admit that there are times when I miss being back in the UK, especially Liverpool.
But the great thing is you can go back anytime. That's the beautiful thing about it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Liverpool. I promote Liverpool. I've got a lot of friends in Liverpool. I'm always pushing the tourism for them, even though I'm doing here and what interviews I've done. And it's like, you know, it doesn't matter where you are in the world now in 2023. You're still doing what you're doing. You can always travel. You can do whatever you like. But it's the lifestyle that you want, the quality of life. And here we still got that quality of life at the moment.
We're very lucky in Australia. I mean, people whinge a lot about various things, But when they look at it, when you sit here and you look around what's going on in the rest of the world, then yes, we are very lucky to be here. Yeah, I love it. I love Australia. I'm an Australian. Yeah,
that's it. But that's great.
Like one, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but you sound like an Australian. You don't sound like you're born in Liverpool. You know what I'm trying to say? You just like blend in. I mean, isn't that the greatest thing? I mean, as I said, you're up there in the creative part of the world. Hank Marvin lives in Australia. Where's he live, Jose?
He's living in Perth in Western Australia.
He must be having a great life.
He comes over to Queensland a fair bit, actually. They have he's into playing gypsy jazz, manouche these days, and they have a manouche festival in Brisbane each year, and he comes over to play. You interviewed an old school friend of mine not so long ago.
Who's that?
Brian Farrell from Colonel Bagshot.
He's great, isn't he?
He's very dry, isn't he?
A nice guy.
He had some good stories about the Beatles coming round to his house. Yeah,
he was always talking about his sister. She was dating George Harrison. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he sent me the link to his because he mentioned me. Yeah.
That's great. It's good that you've got a lot of connection there in Liverpool. The way it is now in Australia, the music scene, and as I said, you got so many fantastic memories with Gerry. I mean, how great is that? Do you think back, gee, we used to go out and tour, we used to do this, we used to do that? Because I mean, being in the 70s, he's already done everything in the 60s. So he must have been more relaxed and just soaking it all in and realising how great it was with the British invasion.
Yeah, it's kind of, even though it's like 50 years ago, it still tends to dominate my life. When most people talk to me, they talk about Gerry and the Pacemakers. It means a lot to me, and it meant a lot to me back then, because it took me basically from being just a regular Liverpool muso who'd been playing in heaps of bands around Liverpool. It took me onto the world stage, and I started to experience a whole different way of life and a different way of being treated as a musician. Opened up a lot of doors and a lot of things for me, you know? So yeah, I'm very grateful for Gerry phoning me up one day and saying, "Is that Joe McLAUGHLin?" And I'd say, oh, that voice sounds familiar. I wonder who that can be. And he said, "This is Gerry Marsden, Joe. Do you want to come and be my piano player?"
No, that's amazing. But what I want to say is, to have that friendship where he picks you to be in the band. I mean, where's that come from? That's come from things that you've done before. So what is it? He remembered and thought how great you were. I want you with me. Or he just thought, I want the greatest piano player to be with me and guitarist. What was it?
Well, I'd worked my way up through the ranks in Liverpool. You know, I'd been in a lot of good bands, and I'd made a lot of good friends and a lot of contacts. And probably as regards being a suitable piano for Gerry, I'd got myself to the top of the tree. So when he wanted somebody, I was probably the obvious one to contact, which he did, you know. So yeah, but it was a lot of work before that, kind of learning, getting better as a musician, all that stuff, you know, that led up to that. Yeah.
Now I'm saying, when you were in the 70s, he still had a big following. Did you notice that when he was going out there, that all the mums, dads, and their kids were coming and getting autographs from him?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. That was it was eye-opening, actually. Yeah, it was just like, to a certain degree, it was still like being back in the 60s, you know, the following, the amount of people we used to get at concerts and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I just want to say, even Paul McCartney has said "Ferry Across the Mersey." He wished he'd written that song. It's that great.
Oh, I love playing that. I still do it now. Whenever I do gigs, people say to me, "Do something by Gerry and the Pacemakers," and that's the first one I always do. I always do "Ferry Across the Mersey."
And yeah. I watch that on video, whatever it is, right? Because that's the movie, "Ferry Across the Mersey." How do you beat that? And having Brian Epstein as your manager, there's the other thing that's unbelievable. Having photos with the Beatles and they're your friends through the 60s. I mean, that's totally mind-blowing to me. But you got to understand, people love Gerry and the Pacemakers. You don't know how many CDs I've got and records of Gerry and the Pacemakers, because they were equal to the Beatles in Liverpool. And the Beatles were actually scared that they were going to knock them off and be the band. You know what I mean? Because they were clearly rivals of the Beatles. in the
They
Liverpool
were.
scene. Yeah.
They were initially, yeah, absolutely, yeah, yep. They were very, 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 very popular, yeah.
Now, Jose, I want you to tell me, if people want to find you on the net and find your music and everything, where should they go?
Well, they can friend me on Facebook. I post a lot of stuff on Facebook. I also have a Facebook page called Jose McLAUGHLIN, Gerry and the Pacemakers. There's lots of videos on YouTube, and there's lots of links just by Googling me. Yeah. And also, if they want to, they can buy my book.
Yep, let's have a look at that. I saw that on the net. Right, just read it out. When did it come out? You should be so proud of that.
I am proud of it. It's called From the Pacemakers to Oz, Journeyman.
It's great. And where can they get it from? Amazon, where?
It's from a site in England called Plug-in Books. Yeah. Friends normally kind of message me and say, can I buy one? And we do it over Messenger, you know. But to buy it officially online, it's Plug-in Books. Music, entertainment, and books.co.uk.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show, Jose. Let me tell you, you're a music legend. And you know what? Being an Australian is great. Being a citizen still of the UK is great. And I just say it's 2023. And I just say, look back and say, what a fantastic musical career I'm having. And look where I'm going from now. Am I right or not?
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. It's been great having a chat with you too, Plastic EP.
Life goes on day after day. Hearts torn in every way. So ferry cross the Mersey, 'cause this land's the place I love, and here I'll stay. People, they rush everywhere, each with their own secret care. So ferry cross the Mersey and always take me there, the place I love. People around every corner, they seem to smile and say, we don't care what your name is, boy, we'll never turn you away. So I'll continue to say, here I always will stay. So ferry cross the Mersey, 'cause this land's the place I love, and here I'll stay, and here I'll stay, here I'll stay.